All right, so let's dive into something we all experience, yeah, every single day. Energy.
Yeah.
You know, that feeling of being powered up,
Hmm.
ready to take on the world? Ever wondered where that energy really comes from?
hmm
Not just the I had a good breakfast kind, but like the deep down cellular level stuff.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty wild journey.
Okay.
From sunlight to the food that we eat, and
Right.
then finally to the tiny power plants inside our cells.
Okay, so it starts with food. That makes sense.
Yeah,
But how does, like, a carrot
right.
or a piece of chicken, how does that turn into, like, me running a marathon or even just, like, thinking a thought?
Yeah, that's where things get really fascinating.
Okay.
It all boils down to how living things, so from plants and animals to even microscopic bacteria,
Wow.
extract energy from the food they consume.
Okay.
And it's not just sugar that fuels the fire. There's some unexpected backup energy sources that might surprise you.
We all have backup energy sources.
Yeah,
Like what
they might.
emergency reserves?
Yeah, it's true.
This is already blowing my mind.
Life has evolved some incredibly clever ways
Oh.
to keep those cellular engines running, even when the preferred fuel isn't readily available.
Okay.
But before we get to the emergency rations,
Right.
let's start with the main course, photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis. Right, that's how plants, make their own food using sunlight.
Exactly.
But I gotta admit, like, I haven't really thought about it since, like, high school biology.
Well, it's worth revisiting because it's the foundation of pretty much all energy on Earth.
Okay.
Imagine plants as these amazing solar panels,
Okay.
specifically the cells with chloroplasts.
Right.
They capture light energy from the sun and store it in the chemical bonds of carbohydrates, primarily glucose.
Okay.
It's like they're creating their own energy bars.
Okay, I'm seeing the solar panel analogy.
Yeah.
But you said primarily glucose, so there's more to the plant energy story.
Right. It's not just about producing sugar. Remember, plants need energy to grow and function too, and not all their cells have chloroplasts. Just like us, the non-green parts of plants need to eat to get energy.
So even plants have, like, a system for sharing energy internally.
Exactly.
That's wild.
The glucose produced by photosynthesis gets transported throughout the plant
Okay.
to fuel the cells that can't make their own food. And here's the part that always blows me away.
Okay.
Ultimately, all the food we eat, whether it's a steak or a salad, originates from the sun's energy,
Right.
captured through photosynthesis.
Whoa. That, like, makes you look at a plate of food in a totally different way.
It really highlights how interconnected all life is.
Yeah.
We rely on plants, directly or indirectly, for our energy.
Right.
They've figured out how to capture the power of the sun, and we benefit from that incredible feat.
All right, so we've got this energy stored in food thanks to the power of plants.
Mm-hmm.
But how do our cells actually access and use that energy?
That's where ATP comes in,
Okay.
the cellular energy currency.
ATP, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I need a refresher, though.
Think of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate,
Yeah.
as the universal energy carrier within cells.
Okay.
It's how the energy from breaking down food gets packaged into a form that can be used for all of those essential processes that keep us alive.
Okay.
Muscle contraction, brain function, even just keeping your heart beating, it all requires ATP.
So ATP is like the cell's, like, rechargeable battery pack.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And here's a key point.
Okay.
Food isn't broken down in one giant explosion.
Oh, okay.
Like dynamite.
Hmm.
Instead, it's a carefully controlled, step-by-step process.
Why the gradual approach?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be more efficient to just, like, release all the energy at once?
Imagine trying to fill a thimble with a fire hose.
Oh, okay.
That's what it would be like if cells tried to handle all of the energy from food at once.
Right.
It would be overwhelming and wasteful.
Makes sense.
The gradual breakdown allows cells to capture and store energy efficiently in manageable packets of ATP.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the first step in this energy extraction process?
It all starts with glycolysis,
Go.
a pathway that happens in the cytoplasm of every living cell on Earth,
Wow.
even those that don't use oxygen.
Wait, you're telling me there are forms of life that don't need oxygen?
It is.
How is that even possible?
And we'll get into that in a bit.
Okay.
But first, let's focus on glycolysis.
All right.
Essentially, this pathway takes a molecule of glucose and splits it in half, releasing a small amount of energy that gets captured in a couple of ATP molecules.
Okay.
What's left over is a molecule called pyruvic acid.
Okay, so we've got this pyruvic acid. What happens next?
That's where things get interesting.
Okay.
The fate of pyruvic acid depends on whether oxygen is available or not.
Okay.
If oxygen is plentiful, it's off to the mitochondria for the grand finale. aerobic respiration.
Okay.
But if oxygen is scarce, cells have a backup plan.
You mean those emergency reserves you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
I'm hooked. Tell me more about this backup plan.
Exactly. When oxygen is running low, cells turn to a process called fermentation.
Oh, okay.
It's not as efficient as aerobic respiration, but it allows them to keep squeezing out some energy from glucose,
Right.
even in a pinch.
Okay. Fermentation, that rings a bell?
Yeah.
Isn't that how we get, like, beer and bread?
You got it.
Really?
Alcoholic fermentation is what yeasts use to turn sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Those bubbles you see in your beer, that's CO2 from yeast happily fermenting away.
So beer and bread owe their existence to a lack of oxygen. Who knew?
Yeah.
But what about our cells?
Yeah.
Do they ever ferment?
They sure do.
Oh, really?
Think about that burning sensation you get in your muscles during intense exercise.
Oh, yeah.
That's lactic acid, the byproduct of fermentation.
Okay.
When your muscles are working hard and can't get enough oxygen,
Right.
they switch to lactic acid fermentation to keep producing ATP.
Uh-huh. So it's like our cells' way of pushing through, like, when they're running low on oxygen.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. Yeah. Even if it's not the most, like, comfortable feeling.
Right.
But you mentioned that aerobic respiration is the real powerhouse.
Exactly.
What makes it so much more efficient.
Aerobic respiration takes place inside the mitochondria.
Okay.
Those tiny organelles often called the powerhouses of the cell.
Right. Yeah.
And for good reason. When oxygen is present,
All right.
pyruvic acid, remember, the end product of glycolysis
Yes.
can be completely broken down, releasing way more energy than fermentation.
So it's like taking those energy bars created by plants and squeezing every last, like, drop of energy out of them.
Exactly. And this efficient energy extraction happens in two main stages.
All right.
First, the pyruvic acid enters the Krebs cycle, also known as the TCA cycle.
Okay.
Here, it's further broken down, releasing more CO2.
Right.
And importantly, electrons.
Electrons. Okay, this is where I start to get lost.
Yeah.
What role do electrons play in energy production?
That's a great question. Those electrons are key to the second stage of aerobic respiration, the electron transport chain.
Okay.
Think of it like a cellular relay race,
Okay.
with the electrons passing from molecule to molecule,
Okay.
releasing energy along the way.
Okay.
This released energy is used to pump protons, creating a gradient
Okay.
across the mitochondrial membrane.
Okay.
And this gradient is the driving force behind ATP production.
Wait, so the electrons aren't directly creating the ATP, they're powering some kind of pump.
Exactly. This proton gradient is like a dam holding back water
Okay.
as the protons flow back across the membrane through a special enzyme called ATP synthase.
Okay.
Their energy is used to generate ATP. It's like a tiny hydroelectric power plant.
Wow. It's like a cellular Rube Goldberg machine, but for energy production.
Right.
This electron transport chain seems pretty crucial.
Yeah.
How much ATP are we talking about here?
Well, under ideal conditions, one molecule of glucose can yield up to 38 ATP through aerobic respiration.
Wow, 38.
Compare that to the measly 2 ATP produced by glycolysis alone.
Okay, yeah, 38. Now that's what I call efficient. But you said ideal conditions.
Right.
What factors can, like, affect that number in real life?
Good point.
Okay.
Cells are dynamic.
Right.
And conditions are constantly changing.
Right.
The actual ATP yield can vary depending on things like the availability of nutrients,
Okay.
the cell's energy demands,
Okay.
and even the efficiency of the mitochondria themselves.
So it's not as simple as just plugging glucose into a formula and getting 38 ATP every time.
Right. Biology is rarely that straightforward.
Okay.
But even with these variations, aerobic respiration is still the most efficient way for cells to extract energy from glucose.
Okay. This whole process from sunlight to ATP, from glycolysis to the electron transport chain,
Yeah.
it's mind-blowing. It makes you appreciate the incredible complexity happening within us every second of every day just to keep us going.
It's amazing.
But is this just about breaking things down for energy, or is there more to the story?
You're onto something.
Okay.
While we often think of respiration as a catabolic process,
Right.
solely focused on breaking down fuel for energy,
Right.
it's actually much more versatile than that.
Wait, so there's more to respiration than just burning fuel?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's what we call an amphibolic pathway, meaning it can go both ways.
Okay.
The same pathway that breaks down glucose
Right.
can also be used to build it up from simpler molecules.
So it's like a two-way street.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of it like a cellular Lego set.
Okay, yeah.
The same building blocks can be used to create a variety of structures,
Right.
depending on the needs of the cell.
Okay.
For example, fatty acids, which are a major component of fats,
Okay.
can be broken down into smaller units called acetyl-CoA
Okay.
that enter the respiratory pathway to generate energy.
Right.
But those same acetyl-CoA units can also be used to build new fatty acids when the cell needs to store energy.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
It's like the ultimate recycling system.
it is.
Okay, cool.
And this flexibility is crucial for cellular function.
Okay.
It allows cells to adapt to changing energy demands and maintain a delicate balance.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Yeah,
The respiratory pathway is like the central hub of cellular metabolism,
exactly.
breaking things down, building things up, responding to the needs of the cell.
You got it.
Wow.
It's all interconnected.
Right?
And speaking of connections,
Okay.
this brings us to another fascinating aspect of respiration,
Okay.
the respiratory quotient, or RQ.
All right, RQ, hit me with it.
Yeah.
What is this respiratory quotient all about? Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Photosynthesis, ATP glycolysis, fermentation, aerobic respiration,
Right.
this amphibolic pathway, and now the respiratory quotient.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together,
Yeah.
but what exactly is this RQ telling us?
So the RQ is simply the ratio of carbon dioxide released to oxygen consumed during respiration.
Okay.
And believe it or not, this ratio can reveal what kind of fuel an organism is primarily using for energy.
Wait, so you're telling me we can figure out what someone is burning for fuel just by analyzing their breath?
It is.
That's incredible.
For example, an RQ of 1 indicates that the organism is mainly burning carbohydrates like glucose.
Okay.
But if the RQ is less than 1,
Okay.
it suggests that they're burning more fat.
So if you're on, like, a keto diet, your RQ would be lower than someone who's, like, loading up on carbs.
Exactly.
Wow.
By measuring the gases exchanged during breathing, we can gain insights into the metabolic processes happening within the body.
Okay.
It's another example of how interconnected these systems truly are.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
It makes you realize how much information is hidden in, like, seemingly simple things like our breath.
Absolutely. And it just goes to show that there's always more to discover, even in the everyday processes we take for granted.
Speaking of discoveries, is there anything else we should explore about this energy journey? I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
You're right. We've only just begun to unravel the complexities of cellular respiration.
Right.
But hopefully you now have a deeper appreciation for the intricate processes that keep us alive and functioning.
Yeah.
From the sunlight captured by plants to the ATP powering your every thought and action, it's a story worth telling and retelling.
It truly is. And you know what? Next time I feel that burst of energy,
Yeah.
whether I'm, like, hitting the gym or just, like, enjoying a delicious meal, I'm going to pause and think about the incredible journey that energy took to get there.
I encourage you to do the same. It's a reminder of the interconnectedness of life and the amazing power of our own cells.
Right.
And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of energy from food.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. We hope you've gained a new perspective on the fuel that powers your life.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the wonders of the world around you.